It's on to Philadelphia for the divisional round of the NFC playoffs as the New York Giants take care of business against the Minnesota Vikings. We have your happy recap coming up next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is presented by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projections, you can win up to 10 times the amount of your money on any entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, joined by former NFL scout David Turner. And ladies and gentlemen, 31-24, New York Giants beat the Minnesota Vikings in the wild card round. That means it's on to Philly next week. We'll talk about that a little later. But David, the Giants won a playoff game. Oh my God. If I had told you this at the start of the year, would you have believed me?
No, I don't think either one of us would have believed those words coming out of your mouth. I think it would have been 100% like, oh, hushy. You know, what dream are you working in? So this was honestly, we both said it last week, though, after the game. We felt the Giants could win this game. I thought they went in with an excellent game plan for 90% of the game. There was about 10% where I started getting nervous. But they closed it out. They did a fantastic job. They got to earn their kudos. They got them. And you know what? Don't celebrate too hard, Giants fans, because, you know, like you said, we got to go to Philly and win one down there to keep in this hard road to the Super Bowl. Actually, the hard road to Arizona coming down here. The Super Bowl's down here this year. But I think there's a lot of good stuff to talk about in this game here.
There definitely is. And I think before we get into the game plan and what they did differently and what you liked and what you didn't like, let's talk about some individual performances. Daniel Jones, we've got to start there. 17 carries, 78 yards on the ground. 17 carries. Holy smokes. Knowing you, I have a feeling that's something you didn't like. But more importantly, the passing game, 24 of 35, 301 yards. He threw 2 touchdown passes. He had a long of 47, was sacked 3 times, and he had a couple of drops, including that near fatal drop by Darius Slayton. But overall, another solid game by Daniel Jones. You know, David, you worked in personnel, obviously, throughout your career. How much more money is Daniel Jones making for himself with his play these last few weeks?
Well, he's making himself, absolutely millions of dollars because the Giants, because they didn't pick up his option, right? And so he's sitting there. They could have had him at a bargain of a deal now. They would have picked up that option and would have thought about that if they would have recognized that he's actually a very good fit for Dabo's offense, as we talked about when Dabo first came over. How, Dabo is a real skillful tailor. He's going to tailor this offense for Daniel, right? And he's done that. We've seen multiple receivers come in and Daniel still have success. Daniel's able to run, much like he did with Josh Allen up in Buffalo. That works for him, right? Then we have Barkley catching the balls out of the backfield and doing some great things there. So, again, there's multiple ways in which this offense really fits Daniel Jones. The Giants could have picked up that option and had a bargain deal right now because the deal that he's about to sign is going to make him a very wealthy man.
Yes, indeed. Now, David, let's look at the offensive game plan. The first time they played the Vikings, it wasn't balanced. It was more heavily slanted towards the pass. Understandably so, because the Vikings have a, not so good pass defense. This time around, it was a little bit more balanced. It was 30 runs to 35 pass attempts, 142 yards on the ground, and like I said, 301 yards in the air. I know one of the things, besides the fact that Daniel Jones ran 17 times, that you didn't like were some of the jet sweeps that were going on. But tell me some of the things that you did like about the offensive game plan.
What I loved about the game plan is that they distributed the ball across all the receivers. Okay, it was Hodgins had his 9 targets. Slayton had 8 targets, which I love having those top receivers get their targets right. 100% on board with that. But then the Barkley got some targets, which was great, 6 I think of them, and then Bellinger only had 2, and Cager had 2. I want to see the tight ends pick that up by at least 3 more targets for the tight ends. But I mean, again, distributing it across the board really well in the pass game. Running the ball, I was frustrated today. I really was frustrated today because Barkley should have gotten the bulk of that work, especially when they got down to the goal line and Daniel had run like 3 plays in a row or something. He was just tired. I mean, he's not built like that, guys. You got to not call him 3 plays in a row. And then late in the game, the one drive where Gilliam wound up punting, I was like, that should have been a very run heavy with Breida and Barkley controlling the clock, starting to wear down this pass rush that have been coming, and it's like, okay, they're a little gas. Let's lean on them now. Let's run the ball downhill. Inside power, traps. Let's get a little outside zone. Let's get, I think I texted you at one point. I was like, here's the game plan for this drive, but they didn't do it. And they stayed with the pass and they wound up, running Daniel too many times. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of running Daniel. They were leaving him unaccounted for a lot today. So I get it. Barkley cannot have 9 touches running the ball for us to be successful. Barkley needs to have in the teens, not 13, like in the teens for us to be successful, not only next week, but anytime in the future in the playoffs here, because you have to control the clock and keep your opponent's offense off the field. With that being said, today we didn't do well with that. We did okay, but at the same time, we were letting them come back on the field. And it's like, man, you just got to keep the ball out of that offense's hands. They have been shown to be the cardiac kids and score late in the game and win games late. I mean, they've come back. I mean, I just felt that there were 2 drives where they did not stick to their identity, which is running the ball and make sure that clock was winding down and getting that first down one after another by running the ball.
The Giants winning the time of possession battle 33-36 to 26-24. They had almost an 11-minute drive, I think, in that second quarter. It started in the first quarter. I mean, that was a beautiful drive. The Giants, I don't think ever lost the lead. I don't think they were ever behind. I think they were tied a couple times, but the lead changes. Let me see.
No, because Minnesota came out, scored in their opening drive, went up 7-0.
Yeah, okay, yeah, they were behind.
And then after that, the Giants took the lead.
That's right.
They didn't relinquish it.
Yep. You're right. That was so long ago. But so yeah, I mean, besides that, I thought the Giants, they ran a lot of misdirections and stuff. I just thought the times that they did run the ball, they were effective. And I'll tell you, some of these, bootlegs and the RPOs and zone reads and design runs that they had for Daniel Jones, it was like, it fooled me. I mean, it also fooled the TV camera who's supposed to keep their eye on the ball. And just,
I'm going to tell you, I've seen the Statue of Liberty play run a bunch of times. And most times it's a fumble. So when I saw them run it, I was like, oh no. And then it was a beautiful handoff and they got like 4 or 5 yards on it. And it was perfect. Like, I was like, you know what? Kudos for you to run that play, because as a true, fan of football that I am, the Statue of Liberty is one of the, all-time great plays that's ever been designed, just because it's fun. And they pulled it off and executed it perfectly today. I'm not into these jet sweeps. I think the jet sweeps are hit and miss with the way we block them. I much rather us being a downhill football block or run, power football team. I think we do really well, like I said, with inside zones, power football, traps, traditional, type football. When we start getting crazy and doing these new era stuff, we just don't have the personnel, in my opinion, to run the jet sweep to
Mhm.
perfection. I think they want it part of their offense, but I think they would do way better taking a note out of San Francisco's playbook where they don't run a lot of jet sweeps. They literally run downhill, power football, and inside zones, traps, and powers inside. That is something I think we could really do well against the Eagles with. I know we're not getting ahead of ourselves, but I think the Eagles' run defense will struggle with inside zones, powers, and runs and traps.
Yeah, definitely. Now let's talk a little bit about the passing game. At one point it looked like they were running the same type of crossing patterns, mesh patterns, especially early in the game. We mentioned Isaiah Hodgins. He was the leading receiver, 8 catches, 105 yards. Love that kid, by the way, as I told you before we started taping. Kenny Golladay was on the field as a decoy, threw a great block, by the way, on one play. I mean, he really took out his any frustration on the Vikings there. And as you mentioned, the distribution. What is it about the passing game? The passing game just has it's looked so much better these last several weeks. What is it about that you think is just come together for this team?
Trust and consistency. So Daniel's having consistently the same receivers on the field. So now he's starting to trust them a little bit more, especially Hodgins and Slayton. Like, even though Slayton dropped that ball late because he took his eyes off it and he was looking for the hit, he was waiting for that safety to come down and hit him because they had played a lot of 2 and he was waiting for that guy to come hit him, and that's what he was looking for. And when the guy wasn't there, I think that kind of threw Slayton off because he catches that ball and that might have been another touchdown. There's nothing but green grass in front of him.
Yeah.
But I think the consistency in having Bellinger, Hodgins, Slayton, and James on the field is giving Daniel a greater confidence on where to put the ball, where the receivers can catch it, who to trust, all that kind of stuff. So that's something, again, throughout Daniel's career, he's had a mishmash of people on the field, due to all the injuries. And earlier in the season, again, mishmash of people. It started consistently with some injuries. Now we got Hodgins midway through the year. They're getting a rhythm. It looks really fantastic. So I think this is in what I think. You know what Hodgins is starting to remind me of?
Who?
He's a guy in New Orleans.
Not Michael Thomas.
Yes. That
Ooh.
crossing route for Hodgins.
Wow.
Like, because he's such a big body individual, right? That if you can get him on that crossing route with Slayton doing a clear and James doing a slant or a shallow cross, it's that old Sean Payton offense. That big body crosser gives Daniel such a big target that it's hard, and he's got a good speed. He doesn't have great speed, but he's got good speed to run away from coverage. So, I mean, I'm looking at him and I'm like, man, if we can adopt some of that Sean Payton offense here, where you're just hitting them on middle to, far end crossing routes like they did with Michael Thomas throughout his career, and Isaiah and Colston before that, it's gonna open this offense way up, because then they get used to him doing the crossing route, then you just bend him up. He does like a little dig and go, and boom, the safeties are flying downhill to hit him, and he runs right by him, and now you're over the top. Like, I started getting excited, thinking more and more about Hodgins when I watch him do routes. And today I was thinking, man, he looked a lot like Michael Thomas for sure.
Yeah. Oh, interesting comparison. I mean, not a bad comparison to make, I guess. So, all right, listen, David, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we've got to talk about the defensive performance, because I'm sure there were things you liked and things you didn't like about the defense, and a burning question that I have to ask you about the defensive performance. So we'll get to that right after this. Hey, Giant fans, playing daily fantasy based on player projections has never been easier than when you visit prizepicks.com. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they go on to score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you win up to 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. PrizePicks is currently operational in over 30 states and in Canada, and they offer projections on every sport. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less, and PrizePicks offers safe and fast withdrawals. Download the PrizePicks app today or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. Don't forget to enter that promo code LOCKEDON at sign up at prizepicks.com. And now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. Life can be challenging and put a strain on our mental health when things happen beyond our control. Seeking the expertise of a licensed professional to help guide us towards a resolution is key to overcoming life's ups and downs. So if you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great option. It's convenient, accessible, affordable, and entirely online. Get matched with a therapist after filling out a brief survey. And if you find that you're not a match to your assigned therapist, you can switch at any time. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today and get 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. betterhelp.com. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm Patricia Traina with David Turner, former NFL scout, and we're talking Giants playoff victory. Oh gosh, that sounds so good. That sounds so good.
Something we haven't had in like 6 years.
Oh my goodness. Well, overdue, long overdue. And David, before I get into the defense, I just want to I know some people are wondering about the injury situation. So I just want to give everybody a quick update because I did get a note or a text, I should say, from the Giants PR staff. Azeez Ojulari is going to have some additional tests done. He had a quad injury, so hopefully that's just a contusion, which, shouldn't be something that's long-term. The more, I guess, concerning, although all injuries are concerning, so don't get me wrong, but the more pressing injury, I guess, was Jason Pinnock, who was hit in the chest on a special teams tackle. The Giants say that Pinnock was checked out at a local hospital for an abdomen injury, returned to the locker room and is flying back with the team and was feeling much better. So good news there with Jason Pinnock. Of course, we'll see what happens during the week. Ojulari and Pinnock, the only two significant injuries of note that we know of to come out of this game. So, the Giants went into this game completely healthy. I mean, all their scratches this week were all healthy scratches. Let's hope that they have Ojulari, who's been snake bit this year, unbelievably, and Pinnock back for next week's game. So, all right, David, let's talk about the Giants defense and the job they did. And before I ask you about what you liked and what you didn't like, I've got to ask this burning question. What does this team have to do to stop the darn tight end? 10 catches, 129 yards. I mean, Hawkinson looked like he was going to kill him again. What are they not doing to stop this guy, or any tight end for that matter?
Well, again, like we talked about it last week, I said the tight end, you got to cover him this week. He's going to kill you. And he almost had the exact same catches and yards that he did in the first week or the first match. I think he had 139 yards there and 12 catches or something. So, Hodges, they got to be physical with the tight end. They got to get up and they got to hit him and they got to pound him and they got to just commit one player and maybe rotate which player it is, but just absolutely be physical with the tight ends. The tight end doesn't like to be physical. Yeah, they block, but watch how they block. They're not like, pancaking people. They're standing in the way. So if you get up on the line and you just hit this guy constantly throughout the game, rotate who it is, and go after him, just say, we are posting this guy on the we used to call it posting. We're just sticking him in the ground. We're posting him in the on the offensive line. He is sticking there. He is staying there. It'll ruin the timing. Any kind of leak pass or anything will wind up being shorter because he can't get into his route. And then your secondary can rally and come tackle the guy. When you just let that guy get a clean release off the line, that's going to cause problems throughout whatever offense you have. And look at the rest of the road. Philly's got their tight ends. San Francisco's got Kittle. Dallas has got their guy, and so does Tampa Bay. So, it's not Gronk anymore, but they still got Odo, who, is turning into a nice little target for Tom Brady. So when you look at the tight ends here, the NFC is a place that tight ends do flourish. You got to be able to be physical with those tight ends at the line of scrimmage. and post them. You got to just leave them there. You got to hit them all the time. Whether it's even, I don't like what's about to come out of my mouth, but even if it's 5, just hitting the tight end 5 times a game, and then you have 51 hit the tight end 5 times a game, then you had Collins hit the tight end a few times a game, like just keep hitting the tight end. And then he won't want to come off the line because he'll start looking for the hit, which will slow down his routes, which will slow down him getting into it, which will shorten his routes, giving you the ability to rally to come hit him. And tackle him if he makes a shorter, play. The final play of the game today, that's what they did. They dropped, was it 29 McKinney into the box?
Mhm.
He got physical with them. They caught the ball, but it was a shorter catch because he couldn't release down to the sticks and get to where he needed to go. So for me, if you're going to cover the tight ends that are left in this playoff matchups that are potentials, and even the one you have next week, you got to get in their face and you got to out physical those tight ends.
Now, one guy they were able to slow down was Justin Jefferson. He had 9 targets, 7 catches, 47 yards. Adoree Jackson was back. In the beginning, Jefferson looked like he was going to have his way with the Giants defense again, but they clamped down on him. What did they do differently this time with Justin Jefferson?
Double and triple teamed him. They
Mhm.
doubled and triple teamed him. I mean, that young man worked hard today. He's going to sleep well tonight. And I mean, I know I'm talking about an opponent, but you know what? We have to clap for him because he was frustrated, but he ran great routes all game long. He was just that Wink just said not today.
Mm.
That's where he drew the line. He's like, somebody else is gonna have to beat us. It won't be Jefferson. And you watch him break, there was always somebody underneath and over top. And typically at the line of scrimmage, there was a third guy that was taking him like 3 to 5 yards. There was one, and then there was over top. There was 2. So there was always 2 to 3 people committed to Justin Jefferson, which is why the tight end was able to work itself open. That's why on that one drive was in the third quarter when they drove down. Jefferson didn't catch any balls, but Thielen caught some. Hutchinson caught some. Then the tight end went to Smith. The touchdown went to Smith. So they were working other angles. Now against Philly works other angles a lot. So that's why we doubling and tripling Brown or Smith is going to be a hard task because both those receivers can kill you, and they have tight ends and backs out of the backfield, and then the quarterback can run too. So
Now, interestingly, McKinney and Adoree Jackson, both of whom weren't in the first game, but were in this game, ended up as the leading tacklers on this team. McKinney had 8 combined tackles, including 1 pass breakup. Jackson, 7 tackles. Okay, didn't see it, wasn't credited with any pass breakups. How much different did their presence make for Wink Martindale and how he called the game?
Well, again, we watched McKinney in the back end. I watched him a lot. He was lining everybody up. It seemed like we weren't out of play too much. When they ran the hurry up down at the goal line, we were out of sorts because they put Jefferson in the backfield, and so 3 people kind of latched onto him and let Irv Smith leak behind him, and that's where the touchdown came, right? But I think we knew where we were. Everything was lined up. And Adoree Jackson being in the game gives Wink a lot of flexibility because he can put him on an island and let him go. And he also knows that he's going to come up and run defense. And there's a physicality with him. Like we've talked about before, there's a real physicality with him in the run game and stuff. We didn't necessarily, I don't want to say I saw like, hits today, but it's his first game back. I think next week, having those 2 in our defense, and if we can get 51, Ojulari back to in playing significant third downs, even if he's not playing first and second downs, if we can get him playing significant third downs. And today, look at 99. 99 showed up a ton, especially in the first half. That
With that
second
neck injury.
quarter, I mean, he really showed up big time. If we get production like that out of him, then that gave 97 some, Dexter Lawrence some one-on-one blocking, and he was just owning the center when he was one-on-one. And that center spent more time in Kirk Cousins' lap than his wife probably does. I mean, it was like unbelievable what or Lawrence was doing there. So again, I think if we got the same production next week out of 99 and we can have Ojulari on some key third downs in there, helping that pass rush out, it's going to be a really fun game to watch.
You speak of 99 and 97, that Leonard Williams with 2 quarterback hits, Dexter Lawrence with 4. The Giants had 11 in this game. So that defensive front really taking advantage of that Minnesota offensive line, and kind of was surprised that Bradbury, their center, played. I know he's had a bad back, and, Dexter Lawrence is a lot to handle. I thought maybe they might go with a healthier guy, but they
his
decided
back
to go.
got worse because he was on it a lot.
I was going to say, yeah, handling Dexter Lawrence is that's no easy task. And by the way, what did you think of that penalty that they called on Lawrence?
I'm so glad you asked, because I was going to mention it anyways. That was the biggest BS crock I've seen. Well, not I've seen this year. They have to really knuckle down what the heck roughing the passer is, because the ball was still in his hands when he made contact with the individual, with the quarterback. He was trying to get him down. As soon as the momentum of the quarterback was falling to the ground, he released the quarterback. He didn't bring him all the way down. He didn't swing him. He didn't pull him. He got the momentum, headed down to the ground, and he released him. Like, that has to be cleaned up, because it's not the only one that's been called like that this year. There was one against Bosa in San Francisco that was very similar, and there was another one somewhere else that I can't think about. There were 3 of them. That's the 3rd one I've seen called like that this year. And I'm like, what do you want the defensive tackle to do, or the defensive player to do? Like, he literally let the guy go when the momentum was coming down to the ground. He knew he was going to get down. He didn't jump on him. He didn't pile on him. He didn't pull him down. He didn't twist him extra hard. And the ball was in his hand when he made contact. Like, if the ball was gone and he did something like that, I might understand it. But the ball was still in his hand when he made contact, which means that should not be a pass interference or a roughing the passer call. By definition, the ball was in his hand. Yeah. So I get tired of this, and I'm not trying to bag refs, because I know how hard it is for them. Like, trust me, I've been in the game long enough, over 20 years, right? I know how hard it is, and they miss calls. I get it. But this year, that roughing the passer call on that type of play where they're twisting them down is being called too frequently. And again, the definition says if the ball's in his hands, that does not count. And the ball was in his hand when he started the contact.
I have a feeling that play is going to be reviewed by the league, and maybe it'll, not that it's going to help, and it didn't hurt the Giants in the end result, but I have a feeling that's going to get reviewed.
They're going to get an apology letter. It's going to be, I'm sorry. But again, going into the playoffs here, we need to define this, and we need calls to the referees like, hey, listen, we want to protect the quarterback, but this isn't pass interference or roughing the passer.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, David, let's take our final break. When we come back, we're going to peek ahead a little bit to the Eagles. What needs to change in that game from the first couple of games that the Giants played? So, folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey, Giant fans, have you ever wanted to show the NFL GMs how it's really done? Well, now you can by hooking up with Ultimate Football GM, where you have the final say over every aspect of your roster. Among the decisions you can make include hiring the coaches and coordinators, making trades, drafting, and free agency. All of this done in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. You can play on the go as you want, when you want. We at the LockedOn NFL Network are already competing against each other, and we've been having a blast doing so. We know you will too when you compete against your friends. So go ahead and get started. Locked On Giants podcast listeners can get a 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code Locked On. That's in all caps, by the way. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in the app stores. Again, that's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today, and don't forget that promo code Locked On, all caps, one word. Hey, Giant fans, thanks for making the Locked On Giants podcast your first listen today. For your second listen, Check out the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you local insights that you love to the national spotlight with daily conversations on the biggest NFL stories. Locked On NFL, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. You got Patricia Traina, host, and David Turner, former NFL scout, guest. And we're talking about the Giants. We are still talking about Giants game. It is January 15th as we tape this. The Giants are still playing, and they will play at least another week in the against the Philadelphia Eagles in the divisional round. Road trip for those of us in New Jersey next week. And David, let's kind of spin ahead a little bit there. What are some of the things that the Giants have been doing down the stretch here that you have liked, that you think will serve them well in the game against the Eagles, which, certainly won't be any small task, but, the Giants seem to be picking up some momentum. What are some things that they can carry over that you think can maybe make this game a little bit more competitive?
Well, I think what works well for the Giants right now is the distribution of the football in the passing game. They really have to pick up their identity in that run game early and often. So for me, I would say they have to go back to their roots a little bit with that run game. Like today, Daniel Jones running the ball 17 times that should be Barkley running the ball 17 times. And if Daniel runs the ball 9 times, it is what it is. I think against Philly, you need to see Barkley in that 17 times running the ball, another 4 or 5 times catching the ball, because he's a very dynamic player. I think he gives the Eagles a fit. I don't think the Eagles can contain Barkley. I really don't. Now, that being said, Daniel Jones probably will need to throw 30 to 32 times in the game. And Daniel Jones has, throw 30 to 32 times probably in the game. And he'll have to be in that percentage where we've seen him before, where he's 28 of 32. Like, he's got to be hitting his targets, and those receivers cannot be dropping the ball. They have to have one of their games where they have stick them all over them, looking like old Bolitnikoff or something. They got to just be able to reel it in, do extra tennis ball work, whatever, put rice buckets out this week, get their hands stronger, whatever it takes, old school stuff. Go chase some chickens like Rocky would do. We're going to Philly, right? I don't care. Just don't drop the ball this week. Because it's gonna be a close game. If the Giants are in, it's gonna be a very close game, and it's gonna be a game in which the receivers are gonna need to catch a ball. But the identity of this New York Football Giants team is that run game, and we have to establish that. Like I said earlier in the show, traps, inside zones, outside zones, some good power football inside. Make that our identity early and often in the first half. It'll pay off with play action in the second.
What about, and we talked about this a little bit. What about the tight end? I mean, just again, the tight end just continues to be a problem for this team.
Aha! Hold on. Wrong tight end. Aha! Wrong tight end. When you look at Bellinger in the first matchup against the Eagles, he went 3 for 3 at 19 yards with a 6.3 average. We need to make the target to him at least 6 targets in this game. I don't think Philadelphia covers the tight end well. I think all year they've allowed tight ends to kind of own them. And that's something that if you watch our games against Philly and Dallas's games against Philly and other games against Philly, the tight end is a gem, is an absolute gem. And I think Bellinger needs to have that 6 target game right here in this game for us, because that will help with the play action. That'll help with the outside receivers getting their availability on crossing routes and goes and all sorts of down the field between the number stuff. Get that tight end 6 targets. That's the tight end we need to talk about.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about Jalen Hurts, who still has that sore shoulder. And we saw in the regular season finale, didn't really do a whole lot of stuff that he's been doing, all season long, probably to protect that shoulder a little bit. How much do you anticipate that carrying over, and how might that affect how the Giants go after him?
I think what's I think what's going to dictate that is how well is Sanders running the ball. Because the first matchup when we saw Sanders and the Eagles, he ran 17 times for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns, right? Like he owned us. And then Hurts was right behind him with 7 carries for 77 yards. And that, I mean, they ran for 253 yards and Scott got a little, cleanup there with 33 yards. The rest of them was Sanders and Hurts. If we can shut Sanders down, right? Hurst running around isn't gonna, I don't think, kill us. I really don't. I think it's the effectiveness that Sanders had early led to their play action success, led to people focusing on Sanders and letting Hurst roll out. We stopped Sanders with our defensive front. If they play like they did today, like they did against Cook, who's a very good running back. I mean, they shut Cook down. Cook didn't even have, what do you have, like 52 yards or something today? So,
Let me see. I think it's something like that. Let me double check. Sounds about right.
yeah, Cook today had 60 yards even. So, if Sanders has that kind of production, then I'm not going to fear Hurst, okay? Because that'll put Hurst more into a pass style, where we want him on third downs. Passing the ball, throwing the ball, right? If we shut that first down run, we shut it down, then that's going to put Hurst in a passing situation, which he can light us up again. But they're a 2-horse team. They really are a 2-horse team. I know the tight ends there, they use them. They're very good at using them, but they're really a 2-horse team. If you look at the way they target, go to overall stats, Brown and Smith are their 2 leading targets by far. So that's what they do. That's where they want to go. In the first matchup, they didn't need to target them, or they didn't need to go to them too much. But still, out of the 217 yards, the 2 of them had 135 yards or something like that. So, if we can stop Sanders, double team Brown like we did with Jefferson today, and then figure out how to stop Smith, it's a big ask. It's a big ask. The Eagles are built well. The Eagles are built well. Okay?
Yeah, but the Giants backups played them tough.
You and I differ on that.
I think, I mean,
they played very vanilla.
They didn't get blown out.
They didn't get blown out, no. But again, like we talked about after that game, they played very vanilla. Both teams didn't show too much.
Maybe on purpose.
And I think it was because I think people were anticipating this right here. It's kind of like what you see tonight with the Bengals and Ravens. Last week they played, they didn't show too much. Tonight, everybody's pulling all the tricks out. Yep. You got to win. So next week you're gonna see them pull it all out. I think we have to stop the running game of them while doubling Brown. If we double Brown and stop the run game, make Smith beat us, he can. Don't get me wrong, he can. But like we saw with today, up in the Vikings, make somebody besides their stars beat us, and we'll be in a situation where we'll be in the ball game. The problem here is Hurst can run, and if Hurst uses his legs, Cousins, we don't fear him running, right? He's going to be where he's at. Right. Hurst can run. So again, I'm telling, in my opinion, stop Sanders. Let Hurst get a few yards. We used to do that with Michael Vick when Michael Vick was in the game. We let him get his few yards, but we made sure we stopped the run first and then forced Hurst, or back then Michael Vick, to beat us with his arm. That's a similar game plan I would take here. Stop the run, force Hurst to beat us with his arm.
Going to be an interesting game, David. I mean, this is, I think, what the Giants were hoping for. I'm sure, I know they wanted Minnesota again, and they got their wish, and they took care of business. The Eagles going to be a little bit tougher customer, but regardless of what happens, I think if you're, a Giants fan, a Giants follower, you got to be happy with the season and how it has gone, because they never, I don't think very many people, if anybody outside of 1925 Giants Drive, figured the Giants would be in this position. And what a job done by head coach Brian Dable and general manager Joe Shane, who, helped assemble this talent despite having a bad salary cap situation. So it's just been an absolute fun year for everybody. It's so great to talk about a playoff game, let alone a playoff win. And we'll just see what next week brings. It should be fun. Right now, as we record this, we don't know when the Giants and Eagles are going to play. I think they'll announce it probably after the Dallas Tampa game, I would think, right? That's going to determine it.
I agree. I think they'll announce it
Yeah.
after the game tomorrow night. We'll know where everybody falls into play
Yeah.
after that. And I don't even, why is there a Monday night playoff game? Like, we
I
could go
don't
down that
know.
rabbit hole all day long because I don't like that at all. But,
Well, I'm dreading the night game. I have a sick feeling the Giants are going to draw a night game.
I'm telling you, if I'm doing the playoffs, I'm probably putting them on a day game because I'll be honest with you,
Uh,
I know what you're saying, but I'm saying if I'm doing the matchups,
Unless Dallas wins, then I could see Dallas getting the night game. Well, although
um,
Dallas will probably play on a different, I would think on a different night. I would
well,
think.
you would have the Niners versus Dallas or the Niners versus Tampa Bay. Brady going back to the Bay again. So
You
there's
would
some
think that would
storylines
be.
there that I think that they might like for prime time. And the last time the Niners and the Tampa Bay played each other was kind of close. So, I think that might be a storyline they like to leave it into. And then the other part of that is if you look at the number one seed is what Kansas City.
Yeah.
So Kansas City is potentially probably going to be in that mix for maybe that night game, whatever
Well,
day
there's
it
2
is.
days. Don't forget they're playing on Saturday and Sunday. So
I know Sunday night right now we have an AFC Sunday night late game. So I'm thinking next week's going to be the NFC late game like you. So that would be the San Francisco, I think,
yeah.
game, in my opinion. And then the Saturday game would be the Giants game, and that would be the early game. And then the nightcap on Saturday night would be Kansas City playing.
Well, I'm just hoping it's not a night game because everybody knows I hate night games. But whatever it is because the Giants are in the playoffs for at least another week. And we will be back here next week, obviously talking about the game. So, David, as always, great stuff. Giant fans, make sure you keep it here on the Locked On Giants podcast all week long. We're going to do Twitter Tuesday tomorrow. You can send your questions to lockedongiantspodcast@gmail.com. It's on the screen if you're watching on YouTube, and we'll get them on the program on Tuesday. On Wednesday, looks like I'm going to have a special guest for you guys, and it's going to be a current player. So fingers crossed that comes to fruition. Thursday will be the crossover show. I'm not sure if I'm getting Gino or Louie over at Locked On Eagles, but I'm getting one of those guys. And then Friday, Traina, Tana, and Dog. Going to be a fun week here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And I want to thank y'all for tuning in. As always, David, thank you for coming on with me. As always, Giant fans, we'll talk to you again tomorrow.